am going to do a quick walkthrough with everybody in terms of what today's agenda is going to look like. And many of you who are here, you know that I'm joined by a very, very special guest today, which I will bring up momentarily. So today, as per usual, what we're going to do is quickly letting you know that everything that we are sharing with you, we are literally putting our professional hats on. So for my special guest, that's his investor's hat, his general contractor hat. For me, that's my investor's hat. I've been training, mentoring in the financial education industry for nearly 10 years now. And that's the perspective that I'm going to be sharing from today as well. And so what that really means ultimately is that I am not here, and we're not here, especially the Trust Your Talent team, as financial planners, accountants, tax advisors, lawyers, mortgage brokers, realtors, etc. The point is, we all learn how to work with all these licensed professionals so that we together can leverage each other's knowledge, time, expertise, and resources to make every single deal as profitable as we possibly can. Why? Because we're all here with a solid financial goal that we want to hit so that we can start to make a difference in our lives. And if you've been here before, you understand that at Trust Your Talent, we always say that we understand money is not everything. At the same time, we also understand that having the abundant financial resources does help living the modern day life a lot easier on a day-to-day basis. And so that's really what we're here for. And with that said, who is Trust Your Talent? In case you've never met one of us, spoken to one of us, and my special guest today, we actually met at a conference a couple of months ago. And what's really cool about that is this is one of the things that we always encourage the Trust Your Talent community to continue to do, which is understanding that your network is your net worth. You got to continue to expand on your network so that you can continue to add to your team, add to your resources bucket. Today, I'm super excited because honestly, we have never had a general contractor who actually is also an investor himself to come in and really share about their experiences wearing both hats. And this is the kind of conversation that we like and that we enjoy. There's going to be some, in my opinion, I've got all your pre-submitted questions down already. And if there are more, feel free to unmute yourselves later on when you're given the opportunity to. To be frank, you're always given the opportunity to, okay? So I just want to let everybody know that. At the same time, though, there are some, I would say, easy breezy questions, Mark, heads up. And there's going to be, in my opinion, some really interesting and maybe even hard questions. Now, who is Trust Your Talent? We are North America's largest real estate investing education, or more so, financial education team with the most amount of breadth and depth within our curriculum. And we also deliver our entire training curriculum in 3 major languages. English being the first one. We also have Mandarin speaking mentors as well as Spanish speaking mentors. And we have been helping students in all over North America and actually some across the world create and build financial successes over the last 3.5 years officially at this point as Trust Your Talent Academy. And our curriculum is the most tailored and most customizable because we understand the journey to financial abundance, your financial success. So for some people, if you want to go by definition, as we always focus on at Trust Your Talent, your financial freedom or your financial independence, definitions matter, as we always say. It is not one size fits all. Everybody's goal, everybody's risk tolerance, everybody's access to resources is different, just to name a few. And that is also why our entire curriculum is very one-on-one heavy. It's all about your goal. At the same time, we always want to make sure that you have the proper theoretical knowledge before you get into the applied knowledge portion of your journey. And to share with you, At Trust Your Talent, we have at this particular moment, and it's growing as we speak, 16 different courses just focusing on financial education, business building, as well as real estate investing. You will not find another academy out there these days that has the depth and the breadth of what we offer. So if your goal is to create financial independence, financial freedom, any sort of financial success, leveraging, investing, this is the right place for you. And what we also really emphasize on is the fact that every single coach, trainer, and mentor on the team, we all walk the walk. What does that mean? It means that we're all active business builders as well as investors, so that what you are always getting in terms of the support, the knowledge, and experiences are always up to date. It is not something that we did 5, 10, 20 years ago, and now we're just teaching you how to do the same things. Again, everybody that's in the game or thinking about getting into the game now of real estate investing especially, you understand how much the world is changing with regulations, with interest rates, and lately because of inflation, it changes the investing game so much for all of us. And so this is one of the most important things, that while we are trainers, mentors, and coaches, we also are active investors and business builders ourselves, so that we can bring the most up-to-date info, knowledge, and experiences to the table to work with you. And we believe that, once again, learning the language of investing, as we always say here in Trust Your Talent, it is a full immersion process. So by show of hands, by the way, who here is an immigrant in this country? Or wherever you are, you're an immigrant to your country? Well, I know I am. And I remember when I first arrived here, I could speak very little. The day-to-day, good morning, how are you? What's for dinner? Or where's the bathroom? And I know my ABCs. However, to be completely fluent, I had to be fully immersed in an English-speaking world. And we really believe that learning how to invest effectively, efficiently, and most importantly, securely, so that you can not only grow your financial resources, at the same time, protect what you've already got and bringing to the table, is so important. And it does take some time. And a lot of it has to do with your mindset and your viewpoints about money. Because ultimately, real estate is just an asset class, and real estate investing is just a vehicle to help you achieve the financial goals that you want to achieve in order to start making a difference in your own life and the lives of others, okay? And last but not least, at Trust Your Talent, we have zero conflict of interest between coaches, trainers, and mentors. What does that mean? It also means that you will be taught. And if you remember the saying, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man how to fish, he eats for a lifetime. At Trust Your Talent, we focus on teaching you how to fish. And so you are not going to be taught just enough so that your trainer, mentor, or anybody from the Trust Your Talent training team is going to approach you with a deal, with the sole purpose of treating you as their other people's money. This is zero conflict of interest ground, and we are 100% education-based only academy in North America. So this is what you're getting from us, and everything that we do is pointed towards your growth that is sustainable. I have been an educated investor for 14 plus years, and unofficially as an investor, I will say, because that's, I think, a lot of people's definition these days. I've been buying real estate since 2004. However, I can tell you the drastic difference between doing it with financial education versus without it. And so I've seen so many people come and go in this industry. And this is also why we focus so much on financial education, because things are always going to be changing out there. The only constant is change, if you've heard of that quote before. And so as an investor, when you have the proper financial education and the knowledge, you are able to navigate. Doesn't matter which asset class that you choose, you are able to navigate through the different situations, the good times and the bad, and the times where you just don't feel like you're making any money at all, and still manage to find and create opportunities for yourself. And so we focus on growth that is sustainable. And this is why our promise to you at Trust Your Talent is to help you create the financial independence that you are looking for in 2 to 5 years. Okay, as long as you follow the roadmap and the blueprint. Success leaves clues, as we always say, and that's who we are and what we are putting out into the world. So with that said, today's topic, I know all of you guys are super excited, as I am. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and going to spotlight my special guest today. I think he's actually pretty hard to miss.
Can you guys hear me okay?
As of now. So Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, I'm excited to be here. I'm pumped. This is such a big room and people keep coming in. It's crazy. It's amazing to see. Thank you everybody for taking time out of your Saturdays to kind of spend like an hour with me today. I'm excited, man. I think I got lots to share. I'm Taco from Talk About Investing. I talk about investing, but I focus only on the renos. I mean, there's lots of education and people speaking to a lot of the real estate investing world, but not too much specifically on the renos. So I try to focus on that since I'm a general contractor. And I've been a part of courses and programs. So I've seen that there's, it's hard to talk about, especially if you're not a contractor. So I've kind of like picked up that torch and I'm going to try to share the knowledge that I have.
That's awesome. I so appreciate that, Taco. Okay, so you know what? How about we do it this way? I'm going to ask you to do, I know you already did a quick intro there. However, I really want to bring it up and let everybody know. And I can see a lot of people from the TYT community already. So you understand the name of the game. We're always very transparent, very upfront, and very authentic about our responses and how we do things. So what that means is, Taco, be as straight up with us as you possibly can be. Just let us know which hat you're wearing when you're sharing your perspectives and your opinion, because I know you wear both hats, like many of us. You're investor and you're general contractor. And so don't beat around the bushes, just give it to us straight, especially when it comes to a question. I can see that there's going to be a couple of questions that might actually rattle a few people here too. So
okay, so I got a presentation and it'll cover kind of who I am and what I do.
Let's do that.
See if we can get this thing working here. All right, is that good? Looks good. All right, so this is me talk about investing. Okay, so Taco, what's with the hat? I know a lot of people who haven't spoken to me always ask what's with the hat. So my last name is Yataco. I was in the military for about 17 years in the Army Reserve, and in the Army, everybody goes by last names. So I was Yataco, and then it shortened to Taco. And then my wife bought me this hat. She said it would be funny as a joke. And then I started using it for networking, and it's so much easier to network as Taco than just Mark. So that's kind of how the hat came to be, and a little bit of my background. I've been doing real estate investing renovations for about 15 years. I started being the tile guy, doing the work myself. So I've done the work and I've continued to grow my business. We've done over 1,500 units as a company in the last 15 years or so. I started, like I said, I started me and I've continued to grow my team. We do about 40 turnovers a month for different real estate investors and funds as a company. And then as we continue to scale that, I started a kitchen manufacturing company just because I was buying so much volume of kitchens. So I started a kitchen manufacturing company and I've scaled that up. And now we're doing a material supply company as well, which supplies everything after the drywall, which I think is important for real estate investors to kind of have control over. And that's kind of a little bit about me. I own real estate as well. I have a fourplex in Welland. I was a general contractor and my one of my clients was a real estate investor. He kept buying, I kept renovating, and I did a bunch of flips, but I never really purchased and kept the land myself. And then, at like 10 years down the road, as I was growing my renovation company, I started to look at him and I was like, the biggest difference between me and him was he controlled the asset. And then I started to acquire assets myself. So I bought a fourplex in Welland. Well, it was a house. I converted it into a fourplex. Another big project we're working on right now is I bought a house and a parking lot in St. Catharines, and we're working on doing a 12-unit development building from the ground up.
Hey,
So
Taco, just gonna quickly step in here because we do have audience, as I can see right now, across North America, literally. If you want to let people know where Welland is, where St. Catherine is, I know many of us know where that is as Canadians. However,
yeah, so it's in Ontario, Canada. They're smaller towns outside of a larger area. Like there's a large city called Hamilton, and it's about an hour away from that city. So it's a smaller town, but there's a lot of good things happening in those cities, and a lot of the larger town is spilling out into these smaller towns. So that's kind of the areas that I'm working in.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so that's me. Now let's get into what we all want to know. Okay, so I figured I'd start with some questions for everybody. I guess just by show of hands or some hearts or something like that. Maybe a taco emoji would be kind of cool. Who's actively working on a rental project right now? Okay, awesome. Who's currently managing their own rental project? Um, is there any DIYers in the room?
Oh, couple of hands.
Oh. Who lets contractors pay for material? These are all loaded questions. So we're gonna talk about it. How many contractors know your investment strategy? How many of them know what you're trying to do? If you're flipping, if you're burring, if you're buying and holding, how many of your contractors actually know what you're trying to do? And how many contractors are out here learning about real estate investing? So it's pretty interesting, I think, because we spend a lot of our time, even some of our money, to learn a lot about how to invest in real estate, how to find the deal, how to buy the deal, how to, manage the entire thing. And then when it comes to the renos, a lot of people just give everything to the contractor and just say, everything, you'll figure it out. You're a contractor, right? Even though we've spent all of this time to become real estate investors, and it's not easy to become real estate investors, right? You guys all know this. It's a lot of hard work. It's complicated. There's a lot of terms, and then I don't know why we just give it to the contractor and let them figure it out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about contractors and why they are all over the place and why quotes are all over the place. Because I think, we hand off a lot to the contractors, but really the word contractor is such a big term, and it really comes down to what type of contractor there is. That's why quotes are so, I know you hear a lot of like, don't go with the high guy, don't go with the low guy, just pick the quote kind of in the middle. And I honestly think that's the wrong approach being a contractor. I think the approach is understanding who the contractor is giving you the quote, and that will explain why their number is where their number is. So let's talk about types of contractors. So there's a bunch of types of contractors. The first one will be your DIY, newer kind of a contractor. He is probably going to be the lowest on the quote. His overhead is going to be low, right? He's probably just him. Sometimes there's like a father-son team, two good friends, or just a couple guys that they just want to make ends meet. And they don't have the ambition to grow a giant contracting company. They don't care to, make as much money as possible. They just want to make sure that their individual needs and goals are met and to pay their household bills. And that's all they want. And that's all they need. That doesn't mean they are not skilled. That doesn't mean they can't do the job. it's his quote's going to be low, and you just got to understand that. And part of understanding that, this guy's not going to be a professionalized person. He is not going to give you the, not going to have a fancy website, not going to have the most formal quotes. I mean, you might get quotes on a napkin or a piece of paper. I'm sure you guys have seen that before too. But if you can understand that and know who he is, know that the DIYer, you might have to manage him a little more and professionalize him a little more, because he is not a professional.
Hey, Taco, just out of curiosity, based on your experience, where would most of us find these DIYers?
DIYers will be a lot of like friends and family who have a friend who's starting something, or the Kijiji, right? Like the Kijiji Facebook Marketplace kind of a level, is where you would find a lot of these guys. And you could
Absolutely.
recognize these guys based on their not having a system, or like, like a platform that they use to manage. And like I said, a lot of like handwritten notes
Yeah.
and just kind of text for the quotes kind of personality.
Yeah. And I really want to jump in here quickly, though. And going back to your point earlier, Taco, is that in our industry, we tend to say, you've probably heard this, if you pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys. And I do believe that a lot of the times this really is 100% applicable to general contractors. And again, most importantly, we talk about the BRRRR process at Trust Your Talent so much, because at any given point, if you're doing the property first approach as an investor, 99% of the times you are going through a BRRRR process. Remember, it's not a strategy. People that call it a strategy, they are not financially educated. It is a process, because the BRRRR process, the second R is, as we know, renovation. And renovation is the value add portion, which is why it is so important for you to work with a team that is going to maximize the value, and as a result, maximize profit. And so we always say that investors, true investors, we don't focus just on how much it's going to cost us. We focus on ultimately how much it's going to make us. Because I know, Taco, one of the questions that we have for you, which you can answer later on, is maybe some of the experiences that you have, is the fact that a lot of us have made the mistakes of going with somebody we thought was more cost effective, or AKA cheap. And so at the end of the day, we actually end up spending more money later on fixing the renovation than the renovation itself.
Yeah, it's going to come down after I go over the different contractors. We're going to jump into that, and that is going to be covered for sure. I know those are, I've done a few of these
Burning
presentations,
questions.
and I'm constantly changing. So this is the first time I'm doing this presentation for any of the groups that I've spoken to, because I'm always evolving kind of like the feedback that I get from you guys. So the more feedback you guys give me, again, right, nobody's really talking about the renos. So the more reno questions you guys give me, the better I can focus my content around you guys. Because for me, it's not about me. I run a successful company. I already have GCs and teams that work for me. I am trying to figure out how I can continue to make this topic more educational for you guys. And renos aren't easy, they're complex, and they're kind of all over the place. So let's quickly jump in so we can get through this and get to your hardcore questions. So after the DIYer, you're going to have the jack of all trades, right? He's going to be able to do everything, or say he can handle everything and do everything. Again, he won't be so expensive, but he's already kind of established himself. He knows kind of, he doesn't need to chase for work. He's a very big referral kind of guy, and everybody wants to use him, and he knows a lot. He's got a bit of experience, but again, he is not trying to be a professionalized guy and trying to grow it to a massive scale. So he'll come in a little lower, and this is kind of the other type of contractor. And identifying these guys will help you understand why they're pricing at the way they're pricing, and how much of your personal management time you're going to need to put into these guys. The next kind of trade that we have is a cosmetic contractor. And these guys have just found a good rhythm in what they started. So they started as a DIYer, and then they just kept getting paint job after paint job after paint job. And now they solely focus on paint job because they have figured out the system to continue to make an abundance of money just doing paint jobs. And they won't do everything like the jack of all trades. They've just kind of like niched into one type of cosmetic, and it'll be a cosmetic renos. They're not going to be, doing structural stuff or complicated stuff. They have picked kind of one of the items, and learned how to be good at it. Haven't professionalized it, haven't systemized it, but they're good at it. And that's a lot of their focus. And when they advertise on their companies, they'll be like Jim's Painting Company or Susan's Flooring, like that. And that's their kind of marketing that comes around it. And all of the first three guys, there you'll find them all over Facebook, Kijiji, or through a lot of the referrals. And then we start moving into these bigger guys in this different space of contractors. And these guys are the ones that are going to be charging you a fortune, and you are not going to understand why. So these are the specialists. This is like a trim guy that only does high volume trim. And I mean high volume, he wants like 5, 10 houses to do. And these guys, they'll advertise and they'll get quotes and stuff like that, but their numbers will come in incredibly high. But that's because they have systemized and professionalized how they do what they do, and they do it at such a fast, high skilled level that they will blow through a house in, like a day. Like a professional trim guy will get this job done really fast, but he'll be expensive because he knows he can get through a lot of the work, and he does a really good job of the work. So they want to get paid for their time, and their time, if they could do 10 houses in one day, they're going to try to charge you for 10 houses if you only give them one, because their day is wasted. That's another thing that kind of happens with contractors. You just think it's half a day's work, but for me, you kill my day, because where else am I going to go? What else do I do with my day? It's hard to book 2 half days. So as contractors, we'll charge you for the full day, whether that is my hourly wage, right? For the smaller guys, or the bigger guys, they're fixed kind of what they need to make as an organization. And the last type of contractor is the GC. He'll be a little more professionalized. They will have a location to go visit, right? They'll have, cars with their logos, and it won't just be them. There'll be a bunch of guys. They'll have a management team. They'll have systems built in. They will have proper invoices. They will have, like for us, we have a online portal for our clients, so you can watch the renovations as it happens with our guys. So our contractors will update photos or kind of track progress, and you guys as our clients will have that same kind of vision on the job site for us. So these guys, they're using a mix of everybody below, and they are obviously putting a layer of profit on for managing those guys, but these guys are the big guys. And it depends on your project. Maybe, if you're doing a bigger project and you want to manage people less, I would go with the bigger guy, because they're going to manage all of these guys, get rid of a lot of these headaches for you, and they will understand, the permitting process, any inspections that need to happen, and they will coordinate architects, engineers. They will take care of a large chunk of the management from a Reno side of things. So that's kind of my breakdown of contractors, which if you understand who these guys are and kind of like what they're able to do, it's going to help you decide on your scope of work for them. Like if you're just painting the unit, I would go with, the bottom 2 guys. If you're going to do a large flip where you're moving load bearing walls and, really changing the look of that house, I'd stick to the top or the bottom 2 guys, the specialists or the GCs, because they'll be able to handle these larger tasks for you. The jack of all trades will always say he could do it, but it doesn't mean he can. And then also too, one other thing about contractors, go see them. Go, like if you have a 5-unit building, you want to have at least 2 guys per unit typically working. So if you go look at their job site and there's only 1 guy, or, or there's a lot of guys, it's going to tell you, do they have enough guys to manage your workload? Every contractor, especially in today's environment where there is such a shortage of contractors, everybody is going to say, yes, I can do it. And yes, they will all say yes. But can they actually do it? Can they be there for you? That you kind of got to go and look at the jobs. I had a bunch of clients come to me and say, hey, Mark, I got a big job. I've looked online. I don't see a lot of your photos. And they ask me, how do I know you're legit? And I was like, well, you can jump in a car with me and I will tour you through 15 of my job sites, and they will all be active. There'll be guys in every single job site. And that's how I show my clients who we are and how big we are. Okay, let's go into this. I think is the most crucial part in managing contractors is understanding your scope of work. If you don't know what to say to the guy and how to tell him what to do, it's going to be very difficult for you to get them to be on the same page. And there'll be a lot of, oh, I didn't know this was part of the quote or it wasn't part of the quote. And then you get into these kind of like costs that you didn't understand that were happening. So we got to decide on the scope. So what is your rental goal, right? Like, what is your rental goal? And the more detailed you could be with this goal, the better it is for you and the more transparent, kind of we're talking about, we got to be real to each other. We got to be real to the contractor. I want you to do all of the flooring. All of the flooring means all of the flooring. If you're like, I need you to do half of the flooring and then you try to layer on a few more pieces, contractors thrive on change orders because you're stuck with them already. You're already in bed with them. They are going to try to make as much profit as possible on those change orders. And that's kind of how a lot of these guys operate. So for deciding a scope for flips, you need to have high quality craftsmanship and ideally cheap materials when you're doing a flip. The reason being is when you go to sell a flip and you start walking through a flip, if anybody's walked through a pre-done flip, you'll start looking at the craftsmanship. And if the trim isn't really nice, you can see that the taping wasn't so good, you start thinking, well, what else didn't they do good? Like, did they do the structural good? If they didn't do the trim good, how could they have done the structural good? And then you start opening up these like doubts and questions in the buyer's mind, and it'll really scare them from the project. So for a flip, you need to have the outward facing finishes look pristine, clean. Those ones, be really picky on your, on the finishes for your client, for your product, sorry. The next one would be rentals. Rental properties, you want to use the 2-foot rule for rentals. You need cheap, fast, quick. It's a rental property. Try to not get so caught up on the deficiencies. I use a 2-foot rule. So what I do is I'll stand in the middle of the room, 2 feet away from the wall, and anything that really pops out that is larger than a quarter, I'll bug them about that. I'll say, hey, can you fix that? Can you fix that? Can you fix this? If you start trying to look at every wall and looking at finishes, you'll never get done. One good comparison I use is retail stores. Go to a retail store, go to a nice hotel. Next time you're in a hotel, look at the quality finishes. I'm in Vegas right now at a kitchen manufacturing show. I'm in a really nice hotel, and let me tell you, the grout lines aren't perfect. The tiles aren't perfect. I'm paying a lot of money to be here, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I am here for a short visit, or I'm here for a small period of time. This isn't my permanent home. So most renters are looking for the overall look and not the nitpicky look. And if you nitpick your contractor over and over and over again, eventually they're going to charge their back to you in some other form or fashion. So 2-foot rule is what I use. Stay 2 feet away. Look at whatever you're looking at, the kitchen, the floor, the trim, the doors. And if it doesn't really bug you, then just let it be, right? The goal is to get these things finished and rented versus getting them perfect. Okay, and the other one is long-term holds. So for long-term holds, we're talking about like 5 years plus. For that stuff, you want to spend more money on your product because you want that product to last. It's so tempting to get caught up on the cheap floor or the cheap door or that truckload sale that they have at Home Depot, and you pick up all this product and it was really cheap. But then when you go to repair it, because we don't talk about unit life cycles often enough, after you own a building, you buy it, you rent it, at some point, someone's going to move out. And at some point, someone's going to move back in. And in between that time, there's always going to be a repair. And if you don't have a product that you know where to go get, or that's going to last and take the beating of a tenant, then you're going to have to repair it, and you're going to start to lose a lot of the cash flow or that, reserve fund that you've built up over the time period that you've had the property, and you're going to just blow all of that because you cheaped out on some floor. So how I create a scope of work. So first, like I said, I go into each room. I do it by room, go into each room, write out what needs to be done in the room.
Hey, Taco. Sir, I'm just going to step in quickly. I mean, for those of you who have attended business fundamentals as well as real estate investing fundamentals, you understand this already. For those of you who may have not or forgot about it, we always say draw a triangle out for yourself. Okay, draw a triangle out for yourself. If you have pen and paper right now, or use your devices, whatever that's available to you. And then at every single tip of that triangle, okay, I want you to write down speed, quality, and price. Speed, quality, and price. And so a lot of the times as investors, we're constantly swimming between hitting 2 out of the 3. In the perfect world, all 3 criteria will be checked. However, as investors, we're constantly swimming between those 3 criteria every time we do a value add project. And I think Taco, basically, this is what you were saying earlier. Okay, if you want it done cost effectively and fast, quality may not be there. If you want good quality and you're spending good money on it, it's probably not going to be fast.
Yes, I agree. I
So
use that triangle a lot.
exactly. So think about that. And also for investors, deciding on a scope of work, we always say you start from the end goal in mind. Okay. And so this can be a conversation that you have with your trainer, with your mentor before you embark on a project like this. Because again, for some of you, you understand that at Trust Your Talent, one of the courses in the curriculum is actually staging and design. And I know a lot of people, when they first come to the community, they're going, I thought I was here to learn how to invest in real estate. Why are you teaching me staging and design? And it goes back to what Taco was saying. You got to really think about who the end customers are, because that's all we're doing here as investors. In order for you to minimize your vacancy, in order to maximize your profit, your rent, your income, you always got to think about not just your strategy, who your target demographics is so important. And staging and design not only ties into the renovation process, it ties into the development process, because we also have infill and project management here, is the fact that you got to be very clear about who you are serving when you put out a product right from day one. And so hopefully that'll segue nicely into what you're about to talk about, Taco.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so for writing out the scope of work, like I said, I go into every room, think about who your tenant is, who your out facing client is, right? Are you flipping it? Are you doing a BRRRR? Are you going to do an Airbnb? They're all different. The end users are all different, and it's important to know what you want out of each renovation. So I will go and I will write it out. Each room, I'll make a checklist of what I want done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go confirm my spec. So how I do that, I don't know if this is the next slide or we're going to go somewhere different here. Okay, so how I confirm my spec, I will go and get the GC, the big GC, the guy that's advertising everywhere, the guy that's going to tell us the most. And I'm going to do my walkthrough with that GC, one guy, nobody else. I'm not going to get a whole bunch of people yet. I'm going to get this one guy, and I'm going to walk through the job with him. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to renovate the kitchen. And you may not know everything that is involved with renovating a kitchen. So with your checklist, also have a pen and get ready to write stuff down. So what I do is I'll walk through with the contractor and I'll say, hey, I want to do the kitchen. And they're going to ask me a bunch of questions. They're going to say, well, are you going to take down all the cabinets? Yes, I'm going to take down all the cabinets. What about the electrical? Are you going to change the layout? That contractor is going to start asking you questions about your scope. And if you don't have it written down on your checklist, add it to your checklist. That contractor is basically going to tell you all of the different facets that are involved in the renovation and give you a scope of work. So they're going to confirm your spec for you. They're going to tell you all of the different things that you needed to know. And then once you have that list, you spend a lot of time with this guy. Everything that he is saying, write it down. He's talking about, moving fuse panels or, changing plumbing. Just keep writing all that stuff down. And then once you're done that, now go get quotes. Now you have a really good scope of work, and reuse the words that the other contractor used, right? So now imagine walking through with your contractors, your 2 guys, 3 guys, and you're like, hey guys, I'm gonna do this kitchen. I wanna remove all the cabinets. We're gonna have to change the electrical because we're gonna switch out the layout. I'm also gonna need to move the plumbing over to this wall, and I need you to make sure that it goes out to the rooftop, and you're gonna have to get a roofer up there to, like, imagine now you have that power. You have taken the skills of this big general contractor and get them to give you your scope of work, you're going to sound more professional. You're going to be well more educated on some of the stuff that you didn't even know you had to do. And it's going to allow you to get a better quote. And that's what I do. The next thing I would also do is get rid of the materials. Don't let the contractor control the materials. Contractor quotes are already all over the place, and it's difficult to kind of put apples to apples. I spent 20-30 minutes. I made a YouTube video on my YouTube channel on how I took 3 random quotes and I created an apples to apples comparison, but it's complicated, it's hard. So what I do is I advise newer investors to take the materials away, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, they have amazing websites, build your shopping cart of product that you would want to put in. You don't have to put it in, but around the price point you want, tiles around the price point you want, and you're going to build out the product list. You want your contractors to say, hey, I'm going to do this reno. I'm going to supply all the material. Here's my list. And they have the list now. So the only thing these guys can quote on is the labor for the unit. So it doesn't matter if the guy writes it like this crazy weird thing and has a crazy description, or some guy itemizes it. At the end of the day, the quote you're going to receive is for a unit renovation and all of the labor in it. Now, after that moment and you pick your contractor, then you can negotiate with the contractor and say, hey man, do you think you can get us some cheaper tiles, or can you get us some savings on flooring? And then that way you've created the apples to apples comparison, and now you can start creating some savings. For the material supply company that we use, we'll build out a unit spec. So we will have your floor determined, your trim, your doors, your handles, all of these little pieces, so that you want to replicate it at the end of the day. Everybody wants to do the exact same unit over and over and over and over again. So controlling the materials and where you get it, even for down the road, repairability, making sure it's a product that is always available versus something that is cheaply available, are 2 different things. So you got to make sure that you're getting something that, if you need to replace the floor because of a scratch, the last thing you want to go do is have to rebuy the entire floor because you can't get that color anymore. And that cheap floor is going to be incredibly expensive. So for our company in Ontario, we specialize in making sure that every product that I carry is going to be a product that I'm always going to carry. And we don't carry 20,000 colors of floor, we carry 10. And they're like the main core 10, and then that's it. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want you guys to always be able to come back and get the product that you had 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, so that the repairability and the maintenance that we don't talk about, we just renovate and, buy, renovate, refinance, and we're set. We want to kind of keep that cycle going in the units. Life cycles are a massive thing, especially the longer you hold real estate and the bigger you get into. You do an apartment building, try to find a floor, right? You want all the units to be the same, so you can take a picture of one unit. So when you're renting it, each unit, you never have to take another picture. It doesn't matter, the layout could be different, but the looks, the kitchens, the feel, the vibe, you could use the photo of the first rental property you ever did and rinse and repeat that for renting all of your future rentals. Okay, so that's material. So we're going to go to the management strategy. I have a little Dilbert thing. I don't know if you can see it, but did you make the changes I asked for Friday? He said, that depends. Do you remember what the changes were? The executive says no. And he said, yep, I made those changes, right? Try to stick to the strategy is the biggest thing for managing contractors, for sure, is try to stick to the strategy. So your management of the contractor is going to be managing the type of contractor first, right? If he's a DIYer, you're going to have to put more management into him. And if he is a larger GC, he's probably going to be helping manage you. He's going to ask you for material choices sooner than later. The other thing is use phases of work for your pricing and your billing. So phases of work, I would say like demo, right? Visual phases of work. Don't use percentages. I wouldn't ever do a percentage quote or contract, me personally. Even when I'm quoting and getting the guys to quote, I will tell them, can you do it by a phase of work? So demolition has a cost, Drywall has a cost, taping, electrical, plumbing, kind of broken out by the phases of work. Because when you, as the investor, walk through your property or you're getting photos, you can look around. Is it demoed? Is everything that you wanted ripped out, ripped out? Yes or no? It's not like a gray area. It's not like an opinion. It's either it's done or it's not. And the more you can do that, the better it's going to be to manage the guy and also manage the progress of work. So use phases of work, have a checklist for each phase, right? What is he going to do in the demo? Write it out. You know, remove all the baseboards, take out the closet rods, remove the closet doors, keep the door frames, like be very specific of all of these little items, and it will help you manage them because they're working off of a list now too. They know what they need to get done to get to the next stage. Another thing is always check in. I do WhatsApp groups, or I used to do WhatsApp groups. I'm speaking to like how I would manage it if I was a real estate investor. So I'll do WhatsApp groups and I will get my contractor to send me daily photos. And I always tell them, I don't want to see the tile. I want to see the wide panned out view of the tiles, right? Because then, you know, it's easy to show a photo in like, you know, we're all on Instagram, we're all on social media. You can do that, like the angles, and you know, you can. Same thing with the Reno photos, right? You can do it. You can do angles. You can, right? So always do some, like a nice wide view of your of the room that they're trying to showcase to you, right? And you check in, or have somebody on your team check in, or your property manager, but always have somebody physically there actually looking at the product. So your approval phases should match their payments, right? So that you guys are working towards the same goal. You want to get through the demo phase, they want to get paid at the demo phase. They want to get the drywall phase, you want to get them paid at the drywall phase. So you're pushing with the same goals. If your goals are in line with the contractor, you guys will both be running in the same direction and we'll be getting there. Don't let the contractor start flooring because it's easy and not do the painting, right? Like get them to do the work in the order that you want it done so that you can manage the reno. Don't let them manage you. And like I said, like the Dilbert, stick to the plan, because we as contractors hate changes. Changes aren't so simple. I know a lot of people think like, oh, can you just quickly fix this? And you think it's a quick fix, but like moving a plug is, you know, taking out drywall, pulling out the wire, moving it over. You leave for a week and come back and you see the plug move 2 inches and you're like, that's it. Took you all week to do this, but there's a lot of other repeated work in behind the scenes that sometimes you don't always see because you're not there on a day-to-day. So if you make a good scope of work, you shouldn't have to change the plan. But the more you change the plan and the more you're like constantly changing things, that's when your costs will start to get way, way, way out of hand. Because the goal at the end of the day is to get it to 90%. Don't focus on the 100, get this thing done all the way to 90%, and then use that 2-foot rule, right? Is 90% enough? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And if it's not, then spend the rest of the time focusing on the 10%, but get it to 90, because at 90, you can rent it. At 90, you can list it. But if you are trying to get to 90 at 10%, you're never going to get to 90. So the goal is get it to 90. And usually what I'll do is add a contingency budget for the contractors. We're notorious for getting to things at 90. We never get it to 100. I'm sure everybody knows if you've dealt with a contractor. So always add a second budget for from a 90 to 100 touch up kind of little section of work. If you don't have to use it, great. But if you have to use it, at least you've already budgeted in your plan. And that's kind of like what I wanted to really kind of go over in this presentation for you. I mean, we could talk for days and days and days and days about contracting, but I'd figure I'd talk about the different types of contractors and creating a scope of work, and as well as how you manage the guys and kind of, you know, do all of the little things. I know it was fast, it was quick, but thank you guys for having me, and we're going to jump into all of these questions that Tim, I'm kind of scared, but kind of not scared because I'm pretty good at what I do. But let's see what you got.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that. I mean, I actually had quite a few aha moments myself as well. However, I can see that we're at, well, my time zone right now is 8:52. So we got just a few more minutes with you. I mean, we can stretch it out all the way till the 90-minute mark. However, the point is, and actually, if you don't mind, we'll have stop the screen sharing so that
Oh
we can
yeah,
see
sorry.
everybody in the room here. So it's better for interaction. And it's really funny how you said about flooring. And I love the fact that you say you only carry 10, and these are typically what we would call evergreen products, as you mentioned. And there's it really for investors, it is so important because I know a lot of times we are chasing after what's trendy, what looks good. And then afterwards, or actually worst case scenario, and full disclosure, I've done this in the past and I had to learn it the hard way, is that it was so tempting in my early during my earlier career days as an investor, is when you're doing a reno and you're looking to control your budget. And like you said, I literally walked into Home Depot and I went to the clearance section of flooring. And of course, a couple of years later, had to rip it all out to replace the whole thing again, because they don't carry that anymore, just because of a few damaged portions. And so that was a big aha moment and a hard learning lesson. So I'm really glad that everybody's actually hearing about this right now. And so, okay, I think you've actually addressed quite a few things. So I'm just going to go down the list just to make sure nobody's left out. Because I
Okay.
know some people that submitted the questions, they already told me that they're not able to be here live, and that's from the TYT community. So they'll be watching the recording afterwards. So as a contractor or a contracting company now that you have, can you explain from your perspective as a contractor, what's the difference between an estimate versus quotes? Do you do both, or do you prefer to do either upfront?
So for me, I will do an estimate. I guess it depends on where you're at in the stage. So there's two things. One is I'll get a lot of clients who will say, "Hey, Mark, I'm looking to buy this property. Can you give me an estimate or can you give me a quote?" And the estimate will be like, if I can't walk through the property and it's not real, I'm not going to waste, like, it's time consuming, right? Especially now, the more and more I'm on social media and being busier, I can't get to everybody. It's impossible.
Mhm.
So, for an estimate, I will quickly look at the project. I don't do a square foot rule. I hate doing that. I hate giving estimates. One, because it's never accurate. I'm gonna guess. And I'm gonna guess as a contractor, I'm always gonna guess in my favor. So no matter what estimate you got, it's gonna be more money in my pocket, right? I would rather estimate high so that if I actually do it low, I'm still making lots of money. So, and then the quotes, I will do quotes if you have real drawings, real stuff, and never take square footage pricing, because the square foot cost of a kitchen is not the same as the square foot cost of a bedroom, is not the same square foot cost as a bathroom, or the same square foot cost as a basement. They're all different. So again, with square foot costs, if you get that, we're guessing, and we're going to guess in our favor.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
here to make money, right?
Absolutely. Everybody is out here to make money. And I hope that that's the case. And so I got two follow-up questions for you.
Okay.
One of them actually falls right under here. The other one is, first of all, geographically speaking, who can work with you in this room? How far will you serve?
Okay, so geographically, I guess it'll depend on what we have. I've many renovation arms. So one, from a consulting perspective, I can help everybody, right? Like, you can send me a quote, I can give you my feedback on the quote, what the benchmarks I think they should be using, whether I think you're a little high or a little low based on my experience and your scope of work. And I can help you narrow down the scope. So that, from a consulting and that plan, that I can do. I've traveled to Montreal. I've been to in the States as well, for clients who are buying like a large apartment building. It'd be nice to have a contractor with you to really narrow down your scope of work on a large building. So for those things, I will travel. Obviously, there's costs involved around that. From a renovation perspective, our reno arm is honestly insanely busy. But if we do have any availability, it's from Toronto, East End Toronto, all the way down to Niagara Falls in Ontario. That is the
That
size of our, yeah,
what a
and
lot
kind of
of you
like
guys
up
call the
and
golden
around like
triangle, right?
Kitchener. Like, yeah, we have a pretty, like, we're managing 40 units a month. We have a lot of guys and we're doing a lot of work, and I'm managing a lot of contractors. Not every person is in house, but a lot of these guys have been working with us for a long time. And then from a supply company, I mean, it depends on how much you want, but for the most part, we can supply clients all in Ontario. And we're moving into, other provinces outside. We're expanding the supply company because that reach will be much larger,
Right.
but that's kind of our operating area.
Okay, so stay tuned, everybody, if you're outside of that golden horseshoe area. And so the next one really is, do you charge for providing quotes? You did mention about consulting. So if you want
Mhm.
to talk about your rate, how you bill,
Sure.
feel
So I'll do discovery calls. That's free. I don't charge anybody for, to get an initial sense of what you're looking at and what you're trying to do. That is, I'm always here to help as much as right now I can. So I have the volume to help right now. So I'm offering it for free. And then after that, I have different fees depending on what type of consulting you need. If it's like a renovation quote, I think it's like $90. It's on my link tree on my Instagram. All of the different options are there and they're all listed with their pricing, and they vary depending on how much time I put into what you're looking to do. So I don't charge for quotes right now for a lot of the stuff, but if I'm going to be in depth and it's working on my time, then I will.
awesome. And what's the biggest renovation work you've done? So whether it's dollar value or unit counts, and how big are you willing to go at this stage in your
Um,
career as a GC?
From a supply side, I mean, we supplied recently a building that was like 90 units. It was a completely vacant building, and they needed kitchens for like all of the material. So our supply team put together the packages, and we were just delivering. We drop ship all of the Reno materials for the clients. From a Reno side of things, we like last month we just wrapped up a 22-unit apartment Airbnb like midterm rental and a 18-unit full renovation. It was a 12-unit building that we converted into 8 units. So it's like 40 something odd units. That's our,
Awesome.
and I'm doing a 12-unit development coming up. So I'm here to grow. I want to do more and grow and expand for sure.
Love it. Okay. So for you, because I know you wear both hats right now, I mean, not the taco hat, I mean, investor hat and general contractor hat. Um, as an investor, what do you look for in a quote? When you receive a quote, how would you dissect it? What do you look for? What are the red flags? What are the basics?
Absolutely. For a quote, one part of getting the quote is making sure you're telling the guy while you're doing the walkthrough what you want to see in the quote. So I tell guys I want I want it broken out by the phases or, per item as much as possible. I don't want a quote. I want a working budget, and that's how I do my quotes. They're a working budget. You want to lower the price, we can change stuff around, less pot lights, more pot lights. So I want to see like numerical values as much as possible. Percentages, I hate. I tell these guys don't send me percentage quotes. Um, red flags will be, large upfront deposits, right? Especially if you're going to supply the material, what outputting costs do they really have outside of like labor? So large upfront deposits are a big red flag for me. I like phased payments, right? And you can negotiate all this stuff with your contractors. Some guys are pretty willing to. And
To consider as a large upfront deposit is the percentage, because the scope of work is so different and the quotes are so different.
so this is kind of why I like it based on my scope of work, right? You never want to be out waiting for the contractor finish to get your money's worth. You want to get them to finish so that they get their money's worth as much as possible, right? Ideally in the dream world. So the deposit shouldn't outweigh the first phase that you're trying to accomplish. So if it's demolition and they have quoted 5 grand, then I will give a maximum of 5 grand deposit because I don't ever want to be out of pocket more than the shortest phase that they can bail on us, right? And especially in your quotes, also discuss how do you break up with your contractor.
Mhm.
Every contractor isn't good and every situation is different. Maybe something happens, there's an emergency, or you don't get the funding, and now you got to pause your project or delay your project. It happens sometimes. Or you just got to get rid of the contractor because he didn't work out. Where do you draw the line in the sand? And knowing that in your quote before you accept them, you'll have a better idea of how do you break up, right? take a $5,000 deposit. How do you break up? And that is really key, really, really key, I think.
I love that. I love that because, I mean, for those of you who have been to creative financing and learning about joint venture and how to structure joint ventures, we always say you want to talk about prenup before you get married because regardless of how long and how short a particular relationship is, these are business relationships. And so we always like to talk about the worst case scenario when things are good. Not as things happen, especially negative things that happen. Not always bad and horrible. However, I love what you're saying here, Taco. And so, okay, I love that. And I know you already touched on get it to 90%. And that's funny because I had two questions that came in almost very similar. I'm just going to read it out and you can see if you want to add anything there. Okay. So number one is, how do I make sure 90% of the decisions are made before the work starts? And how much contingency fund would you build in every single project?
Okay, so all of your decisions should be made before you start the job. Because if you're waiting through the work, then that's where things go out of hand and the scope of work changes, right? So for me, I make sure all of my decisions are made ahead of time. Our cabinets to kitchen company, like I said, they'll do a 3D model snapshot of a unit, and it'll have like a kitchen, a door, a window, a wall, baseboard, some floor, a toilet, a tub, and some tiles in the background. And then we'll have little arrows to each item, and we fill in all of those boxes before we start a rental project. That way, all of the decisions are made, what bathroom accessories you're going to use, what faucet, have all of that stuff picked out. So that way, there is a lot less to pivot on because then you're going to get into more costs. For contingency, if you have a good scope of work, your contingency should only be 5%. The biggest term I heard, especially at that conference that we met at, was get a rental quote and then add 20 to 30% and you should be good. That is like the worst way to operate because it's not right. So make sure you're get a quote, have a good scope of work. If you have a good scope of work, you could get that thing quoted all the time. You could send a guy drawings, you could send them your scope of work, and contractors will be able to bid to you. And a lot of contractors do quotes for free right now. So you can constantly be, even if you're not doing anything right now, take pictures of your kitchen that you have in the house or the rental unit that you're in currently and say, hey, I want to renovate my kitchen, and start getting quotes so you can start seeing how these quotes come in way before you actually start your project. And you'll have a good range of what costs are. One of the things part of our consulting team will do is we'll give you our quote. I will break out the quote and I'll give you my quote. And a lot of clients, what they do is they use my quote against other contractors. They'll say, hey, I have a contractor. Here's his quote. Here's the paperwork. And they'll say, can you match it or let me know what your price is? And then contractors will come in. And if they start coming in 10% higher than my quote, well, then the benchmark in your area is 10% higher than what I'm saying. If it comes in lower, and everybody's coming in 30% lower, then 30% lower is in your area. And if one guy is like 50% higher and everybody else is 10, that's how you start weeding out the cost guys. Because there is no rental benchmark, so I'm trying to create it.
Yeah, awesome. I love that approach. And honestly, I mean, we actually have Jeffrey here in the room, and he's our trainer for real estate investing fundamentals and distressed properties as well. And a lot of the things that you're sharing, I know we're already teaching in that course too. And I really want to share the fact that when you heard somebody said you got to budget 20 to 30% contingency, in my opinion, that's a poorly trained investor who does not know what they actually need to do before they walk into a project. So that should never happen or be the case. And so love the answers that you've given. Here is one that I'm actually curious about as well. And somebody asked that question, which is, what is the worst renovation work you've done as a contractor? And what are your top 3 lessons to share as a result?
The worst renovation. Oh man. I mean, I guess I don't think I've had a worse renovation. I've had a renovation that I guess in my newer experience, I guess my younger experience, I don't know, my rookie career, I guess, as I was doing stuff, uncovering stuff I couldn't really see or fathom like asbestos. We had a client where like now I could walk into a building or a home, I'll know if it has asbestos or not, just based on the look and the feel and the materials that they're using, because I've opened up so many different properties. But yeah, asbestos, like opening up a wall and starting to realize that there's asbestos out there. And then I started learning about this thing called the designated substance survey, which what it is, it's a report that you do on your property, and they will test every little piece in your, like caulking on the windows. They'll take pieces of gyprock, some of the paint, and they'll test everything for asbestos, for lead, for anything that could be harmful to you as a contractor or as an individual. And they will tell you also how to address whatever it is that you are dealing with. Like, don't use power tools, you got to chip the floor by hand. And I never knew that, so I like ran into a lot of overrun and costs because I didn't understand any of that stuff when I was in my newer kind of thing. So lessons that I learned were really just, education, right? Like there's always room to educate yourself, and experience is like the best tool that you could use. And this is what is important about networking, is you can leverage the experiences of other people in the room. If you're trying to do duplex, there's 1,000 people that have done duplexes. Talk to them, tell them where did they go wrong, what budgets did they have, especially if they're working in similar areas to you and they just finished. Get a copy of their quotes, get a copy of what they've done, how did they go over budget, where did they land. This community is honestly amazing at sharing. We are so great at sharing and talking, and like, at every kind of event that I go to, everybody's like asking me questions and stuff like that. But like people are asking me the same questions, and a lot of people have had conversations together, and the power of your network is amazing. So leverage that. And I wish I had a larger contractor network, which is we compete. Contractors compete against each other. I don't get it. It's a tough world out there for contractors, but if they worked as collaboratively as real estate investors, there would be so much more contractors available and a better kind of like group of people to work with, for sure.
Abundance mindset. I get that. And so last question, and then we're going to open it up to everybody that's live here. Okay. So like being a good and long-term sustainable, successful real estate investor, mindset and attitude are everything. Skills can always be learned and tweaked and improved. How do you tell a decent contractor from a subpar one? And this is mostly a soft question on characters. That's the disclaimer.
It's tough. It's honestly tough, because the problem with contractors, and I don't think people really look at contractors this way, they are artists. These guys are artists. Being a contractor is a skill that they have, and that it takes time to build. Like for me to do taping, I could say I can do taping, or I could have 15 years of experience and I could be an amazing taper. How do you differentiate one from the other? It's very difficult. It's no different than hiring an artist to do a portrait painting. You don't really know until they start painting, and then you're like, okay, this guy's a rookie, right? New tools, um, maybe not a lack of knowledge on some of the stuff, but really at the end of the day, there's the problem with the contracting industry is that the barrier of entry is zero. Tomorrow, Tim, you put on a tool belt, get a little bit of dust on your shirt, and then we'll all think you're a contractor. And that's the reality of today's situation. And then the fact that there is a massive shortage of guys that are skilled is going to be more difficult going down the road on finding that right contractor. So, if you hire a guy, it doesn't matter, like there's no perfect solution. I think it's really just when they start, be there, watch what they're like, see how they operate, and you'll start to know.
Love it. I'm gonna, I want to jump in quickly because I always say, and I'm very transparent about this, the heaviest thing that I live during any renovation process is my cell phone. Because for me, if you gave me a hammer, I always say this, it's more of a weapon than a tool. I'll probably destroy something rather than build something good with it. And I think, it's very, very important, as much as a joke it might be, for those of you who are not general contractors, the whole idea is that you're not supposed to be learning on the spot. And the same goes for what Taco was saying earlier, is that I spend a lot of time, especially in any new market that I go into, and we got to go through the bird process. When we're looking for general contractor teams, I strike up a conversation, no different than when you go on your mentorships with your mentors and you're doing appointments with mortgage brokers, with realtors, with property managers, with every single power team member that you're looking to include on your team in that market. You get to really learn about who they are. And I always ask them, so what were you doing before you started your own contracting business? And I want to hear words like, you know what, I grew up watching my parents or my father, my uncles, so and so, meaning I want them to be in that environment. They grew up in that environment and then they got expired early on. They've been learning on the side and they started joining a team however many years ago. What I don't want to hear, more importantly, and this is big because we always talk about information is dime a dozen these days. It's about what's relevant to you. So you notice that a lot of the times when we chime in, it's about what this means to you as a real estate investor. And so I've had a really, really good conversation with somebody. And then the question comes down to, I ask them, so you told me that, for example, you started out being a red seal electrician. And then, and now you're a general contractor. When did that shift happen? So you obviously want to hear something that's a bit more profound rather than somebody that goes, well, one time on this job, somebody asked me to do this and I figure, you know what, it's not that hard. I'll just go on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even the YouTube, we talk about YouTube University a lot. But for newer investors, if you're trying to get a sense of like stuff that you haven't seen done, it's a good resource to like watch contractors, like how to frame a wall. You could go just so that you get at least a quick video on how it's done. Because if you've never seen it how it's done, that's a good resource to find it. But you're right, there's lots of guys, yeah, like how did you pivot? When did you get there? Right? Like for me, I worked in the financial industry. My dad asked me to do a backsplash on the weekend. I did one job and I found out I was pretty handy with my hands and I kept doing more tile jobs. And then I transitioned into bathrooms and then bathrooms started to add small framing and small plumbing. And I just kept growing and growing and growing. And over the last 15 years, I am where I am today. So like you're saying, that story, that's a good story. That's a real story. That's a deep experience story. And that's the kind of contractor that you should be looking for.
Exactly. Okay, so we got 10 minutes. I'm going to open up to the floor. If you've got a question now, it's your chance. Put up your hand and unmute yourself. Michelle, go ahead.
Hi, Taco. Good to see you again.
Hey.
I have a question. So I always try to approach things from a win-win perspective, right? So when you do find that good contractor in your area, and they're really busy and you want to make sure that your jobs are getting there, what kinds of things do you as a general contractor look at in a real estate investor that make your job easier so that you can, be profitable and get to other jobs? And like, what do you look for in a partnership with a real estate investor?
For us, really, for a real estate investor is somebody who's done a bunch of projects, and then they have a good understanding of the renovation project. Like for us, for newer investors, I just make sure that they're working with a good coaching team or have some sort of like good education. Because if you don't have a real estate investing kind of background and you're jumping into real estate and you haven't gone through sort of like how to run numbers and how to, do the property, those people are so much more emotional and tied to that project on such a high emotional level, which is why I don't work with retail homeowners. Like I won't go do Jim's house because he's going to be so passionate about the look and the finish and the feel and all these little things. And that's what drives me nuts when we're just trying to get to 90 so that you guys can rent it. So that's for me is somebody who's got some experience or some openness to how the industry works. I don't know if that helps.
Yep, thanks.
More questions? The floor is
Hey,
yours.
Taco.
Jeffrey.
Hey, I love the hat. It makes me remember you, but I'm just kind of curious on, like, say if we bought a property outside of the province and I have a job, I can't just take unlimited vacations. So I want to be there at like the beginning, obviously, to walk through and get all the details with the guy. But say I can't go out until like near the finish. Is it comfortable enough to just rely on videos and phone, like pictures and stuff like that? To be able to
Yeah,
with
of course.
somebody, or
Yeah, I would say yes. You can definitely manage a guy from not having to be there every day. So what I do is with guys like that, when we work on like further projects, I mean, I'm managing 40 projects. I have 3 project managers. They're trying to drive around to hit every site. I'm also popping in on different sites. I can't get to every site physically. It's impossible. So what I do is I coach my contractors on how I want the photos. So I'll take photos during that initial phase and I'll be like, look, this is the photo I want from the bathroom. This is the photo I want in the kitchen, and throw that in your WhatsApp group, the before photos. And then when you get them to do the after, you want them to replicate the photos of the after in the same kind of like wavelength. And it's okay, like especially now with video calls and stuff like that, it's so much easier to do walkthroughs. And when I do video call walkthroughs with my contractors, I just make sure that they're putting their screen on the fisheye mode or the widescreen mode so that you can see the most.
okay. Hey, congrats on your success, buddy. Keep on going, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm just going to quickly jump in here. And this is why earlier I really like what Taco said, is the fact that you got to control the material cost on your own. And for those of you who have not watched my Daily Dose with Tim, make sure you go and watch those as well. I just touched on the fact that we love investor cards because when we get to do renovations, we pay for materials and we get to earn points, so that when you do need to travel to look at your projects, you don't actually have to add that as a line item, meaning it's not an actual expense because you've already spent the money on renovations and other business expenses. And as a result, you can potentially get free travel out of it. Now, the other side of all of this, though, is that remember, your network is your net worth. So what a lot of the people are doing in the community, because this is the way I started out as well, and I love the community that we get to have these days, is that if you're doing a project, Dave, outside of where you are, and that's not as easy to get to, there might be a TYT community student investor in that market, chances are. And you can strike up a deal with them. And you know that these people you can trust because you're trained the same way. You're trained on how to take those pictures, pick out any issues that you were taught to pick out as well, and see what you can do. So though, like, your network is going to be super important here. Awesome. And I know Jeffrey has a question, so go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. A lot of useful information. Actually, my question is about controlling the material cost, because for a lot of investors like us, you know, like we basically investing in a different market rather than like where we live. So in that sense, what's your suggestions on controlling the material cost? Because like when I do a renovation far away from where I live, I do have to relying on my contractor to provide the materials overall.
So again, like for me, when you control the material costs, I tell new investors all the time, and even like some of the guys that coach through me for when you're doing a contracting job, use Home Depot. Home Depot is across Canada, in the US, like it is everywhere. You can use that as your benchmark pricing, and then just make sure that where they're getting floors is not like, you know, you want to try to control it. If it's far away, I mean, it's going to be a lot harder to control that for the long period of time, right? But if you're investing in a long period of time, it might be worthwhile to find a supplier or find out where they're getting it from, and then like how long has that floor been in use. But like, for example, I would just use like evergreen products, like Tim was saying, 3x6 white subway tiles or 4x10 white subway tiles. White subway tiles have been around for centuries. They're not going to go away. If you stick to a white subway tile, it should be pretty good to match. But if you start going, you know, very high end, very fancy, and trying to like, if you're going to do that, use paint, because paint can always be, it's a lot easier to repair, but try to just stay neutral, right, is what I would say. But you could always use Home Depot as your benchmark to help control the material pricing. And that can be done anywhere, right?
Cool. Well, I think we got time for one more. Anyone? Okay, let me ask a question back and return to the entire room. Who here is in the process of making an offer on a deal right now? Okay, and for those of you who had your hands up, is this a property first approach? Or is it tenant first? Or for some of you who don't understand the question. Okay, so if it's property first, as we mentioned, you're likely going to go through the BRRRR process, likely. And so, again, I think, Taco, just to wrap everything up with everybody today, do you have just your top wisdom to share right now?
My top wisdom is you're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. And honestly, like that, I've made 1,000 mistakes and I still make mistakes today. I'm running a large company. I am swimming in oceans I've never swam before. And honestly, at the end of the day, just go out there and know you're going to make mistakes. And working with your friends and in these powerful rooms, you're not going to trip as far down. You are just going to take a smaller trip because you've had other people trip ahead of you and you're all walking down the same path. And that's to financial freedom. And it's not to gain the most money on the planet, it's to gain the most time so that you can be out there living your lives. And that's why I'm a true believer of we're humans to live on Earth, not to work on Earth. So it's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make them. If you need to avoid some rental mistakes, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram. You know, Tim can always direct you to me as well. Like, honestly, guys, it's okay. And it's nothing good in life is easy, but when you get there, it's well worth the journey.
Love it. You're amazing. Thank you so much, Taco, for joining us. Or Mark, I don't know which one you prefer at the
I go
end
by
of this day at
Taco.
this point.
Everybody calls me Taco. If you call me and you're like, "Hey, Taco," I'll answer. You could yell Taco down the road. I'll turn around and look back.
Love it. Okay, so to wrap everything up today, I wanted to share with you some of the upcoming events right here at Trust Your Talent Academy. If you're in the Vancouver Lower Mainland area, mark it down on your calendar, and this is going to be shared with you on Eventbrite. Or better yet, make sure that you go onto to our website, trustyourtalent.ca, to sign up for our newsletter so that you can see what's happening throughout the year. And typically, like an academy, we are actually having a slower months in August and usually in December as well. Those are our summer and winter breaks. However, when fall comes back, we're going to be ramping things up again. And a couple of the events that are already in the schedule right now would be the Life Workshop in Toronto. That's a 2-day life workshop focusing on strategic real estate investing so that you can build your financial education and intelligence to move your financial situation forward. However, we got a really, really exciting event that's happening right back here in Vancouver in October. And that is the 4th annual conference and our Academy Awards night. Taco, by the way, we'll talk about that. And I would love for you to join us if you can make it. We have 6 different courses that are happening, and each course is going to be taking place over the entire 3 days of the conference. So remember when I said that we have the largest curriculum as far as real estate investing goes in North America? We also have the deepest and widest scope of courses. And each course typically is 12 to 24 hours in length on one subject. So now you can see how far we go and just how deep we go with every single course and single strategy. So the strategies that are going to be offered at the annual conference are real estate investing, fundamentals, and distressed property. So today's very, very timely in terms of discussing the renovation process. That's heavily covered in that course. And then we also have creative financing, level 1. What level 1 means, make sure you go to trustyourtalent.ca and read about the course descriptions. You can read a lot of what every single course that we offer covers on our website directly. And then we also have 3 days just going into serviced accommodations. We believe that there are a lot of misconceptions about what short-term rental, midterm rentals are. at the end of the day, the general umbrella that we teach is what we call serviced accommodations, because within that subject and that strategy, you then break it down into short-term, midterm rentals. And then after that, you break it down into vacation rentals, executive rentals, student rentals, and rooming houses. There are different ways to approach that. And obviously, if you're going through the BRRRR process, as a result, the renovation considerations are also different. However, you are going to be learning service accommodations as the main strategy, and then we do a deep dive into the different subcategories within that strategy. And then the next one is, for those of you who are more advanced, you've done quite a few BRRRR process, you, like what Taco said, you've actually got a portfolio going, you're ready to scale up and get to the next level where you want to build from scratch. Infill and project management is also offered at the annual conference. Last but not least, US foreclosure buying. As Canadian investors, we all know that there's no such thing as foreclosure buying in Canada, where you actually get to capitalize buying pennies on the dollars. And so for the very first time on Canadian soil, we are offering, and we're bringing in a heavy hitter from the US. Our trainer is what we call the foreclosure queen. She has been buying foreclosures for the last 23 years in the US market. So as Canadian investors, you're going to learn how to invest in the US market. As a foreigner, we're going to discuss a little bit about the corporate structure, as well as how you can actually conduct foreclosure buying in the US without being physically in the US all the time. And so again, 3 days in length just on that one subject. So these are the 6 courses that are being offered at our annual conference. If any of them is something that you think you need to get you to the next level as an investor, I will highly recommend that you get in touch with a strategy coach. I will share with you in a little bit how you can do that. Before we go, as you can see, there are 2 workshops coming up, one in Toronto in September, one at the annual conference right here in Vancouver in October. This is what you can expect out of a workshop. And the workshop is designed for not just brand new investors or people who are thinking about getting started but don't know how. It's also really good for experienced investors, because I always like to say, if you've watched those shows, competition scene competitions, dense competitions shows, a lot of the times you'll hear the judges commenting on, wow, you are very talented and clear, you're already making a living out of it. However, with some proper training, you can be so much better, exponentially better in a much shorter period of time to get you to the next level. And so that's what the workshop is designed for. So regardless of what level you are at, where you think you're at, you got options, especially at our annual conference in October in Vancouver. So we will be sharing a registration link as well, so you can learn more about it. The workshop valued at nearly $9,000. However, it is for $297 only right now, because you're on this webinar. And also, we are offering a buy one, get one offer. So for $297, you're gonna go to a real estate investing workshop for 3 full days, 2 people for $297. So do yourself a favor. If this is something that you think you will need to get you to the next level, register for it. And how, as I mentioned, here is how you can get started. So if I can get my team, my support team, we always need a team around us, to post the booking link, that'll be awesome, in the chat box. We have 4 strategy coaches ready to help you to get to the next level. If for nothing else, get the call process started to see if this is the right fit for you. At Trust Your Talent, we always say that our eventual goal is to build it to become the financial education of Harvard. What that means is it's quality over quantity. Every single year, we only enroll and accept anywhere between 60 to 80 students tops right now, because we want to make sure that results ultimately is what we focus on. We are focusing on creating sustainable financial successes. If you remember how I opened today's session, it is not about just teaching you courses, teaching you strategies that you're not going to apply. We have a complete curriculum and multiple levels of mentorship programs that are available depending on the level that you're at. However, in order to know whether or not this is a good fit for you and the right fit for you, you gotta start by talking to one of the strategy coaches. So make sure you follow the link if you have not spoken to a strategy coach, okay? And these are some of the things that they can and will do for you. Ultimately speaking, it is about whether or not you are a good fit. So on that note, I just want to say thank you so very much for joining us. Make sure you stay connected on Instagram, on our YouTube channel. We also have a Facebook group called the Talented Investor Group. So take out your phone, take a quick scan of the QR code right now if you're not already staying in touch with us in any shape or form. Give you a few seconds to do that. And lastly, I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who made the time to join us. And please join me in giving Taco, Mark, a huge round of applause for sharing and for coming on to today's webinar.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it, Mark, Taco.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank you, Mark.
Vegas.
That's great.
And enjoy your August. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and your Saturday. We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.